When you think about history, what comes to mind? Probably huge empires, right? Sprawling continents. But what if I told you that some of the biggest turning points in our story actually happened on these tiny, almost forgettable specks of land? Let's get into it.
And that's really the core idea we're digging into here. It kind of flips our whole perspective on how history works. It suggests that, yes, sometimes the smallest places, they pack the biggest punch. So you've got the usual story of history, right? It's all about this grand scale. Empires going head to head, huge continents being mapped out for the first time. But the story we're exploring today, it's often happening way over here on this one little island that ends up acting like a lever, just fundamentally changing the whole game.
So that's the big question for us today. We're going to see how geography, when it's all concentrated in one small spot, can just unleash these incredible forces that go on to reshape entire civilizations, economies, and even how we think about the world. All right, first up, let's talk about islands that changed the world not because of armies or trade, but because of sheer, raw geological power. Okay, just think about this number for a second. We're going back to around 1600 BC. The tiny island of Thera in the Aegean erupts. It blasts over 100 cubic kilometers of rock and ash into the atmosphere. I mean, that is one of the biggest volcanic eruptions in all of recorded history. And the consequences, they were absolutely catastrophic. The eruption and the tsunamis it triggered are directly tied to the collapse of the powerful Minoan civilization on nearby Crete. I mean, think about that. A regional superpower just completely taken out by its tiny little neighbor. And that impact just rippled out. The power vacuum that the Minoans left behind, it opened the door for the rise of Mycenaean Greece. The civilization that gave us so many of the legends that became the foundation for Western culture. This eruption was so huge, scientists have found traces of it in ice cores all the way up in Greenland. And yet, it might have even been the inspiration for the whole legend of Atlantis. And believe me, this wasn't just a one-off thing. Fast forward to 1783. A volcanic fissure erupts in Iceland. A toxic haze drifts all the way across Europe, leading to massive crop failures and famine. Where was it worst? France. And all that hunger and desperation, it fueled the social unrest that literally boiled over into the French Revolution. So you have a geological event on a remote island, helping spark one of the biggest political upheavals in history. Wow. Okay, but it's not always about volcanoes and earthquakes. Sometimes an island's power comes from something way simpler, just its location. Being in the right place at the right time, that can turn a tiny piece of land into a genuine global linchpin. Just look at Guam. For centuries, its spot in the middle of the Pacific has made it totally indispensable. First, it was the crucial pit stop for the Spanish Manila galleons, those treasure fleets that connected Asia and the Americas for 250 years. That was the first truly global trade route. Then, in World War II and the Cold War, it became a critical military base. And today, it's still a major strategic asset. Or how about Zanzibar? On one hand, its climate was perfect for growing cloves, which made it the center of the global spice monopoly that shaped colonial ambitions and entire trade routes. But there's a much darker side. That same strategic spot also made it the horrifying epicenter of the East African slave trade. Its economic importance just magnified an unbelievable amount of human suffering.
So we've seen geology, we've seen geography, but an island's influence isn't just about that. Sometimes it's the isolation that makes them so important. That isolation can turn a small island into this unique kind of laboratory, a place where revolutionary new ideas can really take root.
I'm talking about a concept like natural selection. I mean, this is the bedrock of all modern biology. And where did it come from? It was born from observations made on a couple of tiny, remote island chains. And here's where it gets wild. In one of the most amazing coincidences in the history of science, two different guys came up with the exact same world-changing idea at the same time. You've got Charles Darwin, of course, studying those famous finches and tortoises in the Galapagos. And then you have Alfred Russel Wallace, who was halfway across the world studying the incredible biodiversity on the island of Ternate in Indonesia. Two different men, two different sets of tiny islands, and they both landed on the exact same revolutionary conclusion. It makes you wonder, right? Without these unique little island laboratories, our whole understanding of life on Earth could have gone down a totally different path. These places weren't just islands. They were literally the crucibles where modern biology was forged.
Okay, so let's pull this all together. What's the takeaway? We've seen islands that unleash natural forces to create power vacuums. We've seen them act as geographic linchpins for controlling global trade, and we've seen them provide the perfect isolation to spark intellectual revolutions. There's definitely a pattern emerging here.
And this really just nails it. History isn't shaped by sheer size. It's shaped by the intensity of events, the concentration of power, be it geological, strategic, or intellectual, all focused in one small, critical spot. So, to recap, we've got three key ways these tiny islands have changed the world. 1. By triggering massive natural events. 2. By serving as strategic choke points for trade and military power. And 3. By acting as these perfect, isolated labs for brand new ideas.
Really, the best way to think about it is that these islands are like lenses. They take all these big, broad forces of history, things like climate, human ambition, scientific curiosity, and they focus them down into a single, intense point that has the power to change everything.
And that really leaves us with one final question to think about. If history is just filled with these overlooked pivotal places, what are the small, seemingly insignificant islands of our time? I mean, they might not be land, they could be digital networks or just new ideas. What are the small things that are shaping our future right now without us even realizing it?